This professor had the strangest encounter with a student. The professor taught a psychology class of more than 75 students, ranging from freshmen to seniors. Calvin was an excellent student. He always walked into class with a uniquely wide grin on his face. In the beginning of the semester, Calvin seemed able to make friends with other students easily, but then time progressed. The professor began to notice odd behavior in the classroom, but not from Calvin. He remained his same happy self. At one point, Calvin sat at the front of the class, listening intently to every word the professor taught, along with several other students. However, one day he sat alone, while the other students sat together somewhere else. The professor wondered why. One night, the professor sat in the kitchen grading papers. The assignment this time was to write about a childhood experience that the students believed helped shape them into who they are now. Then the professor read Calvin's essay. He picked it up with excitement and genuine anticipation, but as his eyes raced down the page, his heart began to beat rapidly. This must have been a mistake. Calvin's essay was inundated with curse words and gory details. One line read, "I tried to catch her, but she was too fast. She hit me in the back of my head pretty good. Gotta give her that. There was blood everywhere, but I just sat there laughing like a lunatic." The professor wasn't sure if Calvin's story was a true childhood experience or made up, but the essay did technically follow the instructions, so he graded it as usual and moved on. The professor always met with his students the week before finals, in which he called Floodgate Week. That's because his students would come and visit him in his office and ask him their questions before the final exam, hoping to salvage their grades in the last week. The professor's office hours were open later. One student named Adeline walked in. She also happened to be one of Calvin's friends, or former friends. The professor couldn't help but ask why she and the others were ignoring him lately. "Professor, Calvin's not who you think he is. I don't want to say too much. I actually don't want to get involved, if you don't mind," she stuttered. He let it go and responded, "That's fine. I didn't mean to be a bother. I just found it strange because you all seemed to be getting along at the beginning of the semester." Adeline wasn't the last student who visited the professor's office. One student after another came by to ask questions and get help before the exam. And then Calvin showed up. Calvin walked in and sat down, with his eyes on the floor the entire time. Before the professor could speak, Calvin let out a quick apology. Calvin said, "I think I sent you something in place of my actual essay assignment. That was an accident. I didn't mean to turn that in." The professor reassured him, saying, "It's fine. Here you are." He handed back to Calvin his foul, gruesome, curse-riddled essay, graded and everything. Calvin then unexpectedly got up and headed straight for the door. The professor asked him where he was going. "Is that it? Are you sure you don't have any questions before the final?" Calvin replied, "No, I'll be fine," before the door closed behind him. The professor didn't get to ask him his questions, mainly why he wrote that in the first place and if it really happened. It was dark outside by the time Calvin left, but the professor didn't leave just then. He couldn't stop thinking about it. He began trying to connect dots, sitting there at his desk as if it was solving some mystery. Students had shunned Calvin, including his best friends and study group. He accidentally sent the professor this sadistic letter, which even now he had no idea if it was true or not. Moreover, he always had this fake smile, this forced personality of happiness. But lately, he had been showing antisocial behavior, and Adeline seemed nervous when the professor asked her about him. What's going on? Maybe the kid's an actual psychopath, but how did I miss something like that in one of my own students? As the professor sat there thinking all this, he noticed the time. It was now 8:34 p.m. He quickly grabbed his coat, switched off the lights, locked up the office, and left the building. He got in his car and started the engine. He drove off, speeding through the empty streets. He made a sharp turn, spilling his cold, forgotten coffee all over the passenger seat. When he arrived at the next stop sign, he took some time to clean up a little bit. That's when he noticed something. Calvin's letter, the same graded one he just returned to him not that long ago, sitting on the passenger seat. He was shocked and confused. As he continued driving, he adjusted his rearview mirror, only to find that a wide male grin had filled it. It was Calvin.